was late November of 2024 when this happened. I was 18 at the time, just a few weeks into the holiday season, and the Walden Galleria Mall in Buffalo was glowing with Christmas lights and fake snow. I'd gone early to do my Christmas shopping because I like to get it out of the way before the madness starts. There's just something about walking through a decorated mall, the smell of cinnamon pretzels in the air, the faint sound of Jingle Bell Rock echoing from every store. It feels cozy. By the time I was done, I'd been there for hours. I had 3 shopping bags with me: Zara, Victoria's Secret, and Sephora. I'd bought my dad and brother clothes, my mom and sister some makeup, and a few things for myself too. I sat down on one of the benches near the giant Christmas tree in the center of the mall. You know that calm before closing time, when most people have left and the music feels louder than it should? That was the vibe. While I was scrolling on my phone, this older guy sat down next to me, maybe in his early 60s, tall, thin, with a white beard and a big smile. Kind of reminded me of Santa Claus if Santa skipped a few meals. He cracked a small joke about how much shopping I'd done. I laughed politely, trying not to be rude. He seemed harmless. We talked for a few minutes. He told me he'd been coming to that mall since the day it opened and how he was afraid it might close soon. Then he said something that made me uncomfortable. He said, "You look just like my daughter." Then he showed me a photo on his phone of a girl who looked about my age. The picture didn't seem recent. It looked like something he'd screenshotted. The girl in the photo looked nothing like me, and if I'm being honest, nothing like him either. He looked old enough to be her grandfather. Still, I smiled and said something polite like, "Oh wow, that's sweet." After a few more minutes, I told him I had to get going. He smiled and said, "You take care now." That was that, or at least I thought it was. I walked to the parking lot. The mall was almost empty by that point. I got in my car and started driving home. I live about 10 minutes away, in a quiet cul-de-sac neighborhood. My brother goes to the university at Buffalo, and that night he was out at a bar with friends, so it was just me at home. As I turned onto my street, my phone buzzed. It was a notification I'd never seen before. AirTag found moving with you. At first, I thought maybe it was a glitch. I don't own an AirTag, but the message said it had been moving with me for the last 20 minutes. That's when my stomach dropped. I looped around the cul-de-sac instead of pulling into the driveway. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely keep the wheel straight. I knew Apple devices could make the AirTag beep if you tried to locate it. So I tapped play sound on my phone. And then I heard it. A faint beeping coming from inside one of my Sephora bags. My hands were shaking as I ripped open the bag, tossing out tissue paper and receipts until I saw it. A small, white disc. An AirTag. Someone had slipped it into my shopping bag. I wanted to scream. I rolled down my window and threw it out onto the street, then floored the gas back toward my house. When I got home, I ran inside, locked every door, and called my brother. He picked up, half drunk, asking what was wrong. I told him everything, about the AirTag, about the man at the mall. He got serious immediately. "If anyone shows up at the house," he said, "don't open the door. Call me." I sat in the living room trying to calm down. I kept telling myself maybe the AirTag was an accident. Maybe it fell into my bag by mistake, but deep down I knew it wasn't. That's when the doorbell rang. Ding dong. I froze. It rang again. Then 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I crept toward the door and peered through the textured glass. I couldn't make out much, just the shape of someone standing there. Then I heard the voice. "Hey, Ashley," it said, muffled but clear. "I think you might have my AirTag." My blood turned to ice. He called me Ashley. My name isn't Ashley. It was the man from the mall. He saw me through the glass because he suddenly spoke again, louder. "It must have fallen in your bag by accident. I promise I just want it back." I didn't move. I didn't answer. My phone was shaking in my hands as I called my brother again. He told me he was on his way. He said, "Just stay inside. Don't make a sound." I stood there holding my breath. When I finally peeked back at the window, the man was gone. Or at least, I thought he was. 5 minutes later, I was in the living room again trying to drown out my fear with the TV when something moved outside the window. I turned, and there he was. The man was standing inches from the glass, his face pressed against it, fogging it up with his breath. His eyes were wide, almost excited. He smiled when he saw me notice him. Then he tapped on the glass and said slowly, "Don't pretend you don't know I'm watching you." I screamed. He didn't move, just smiled wider. I ran into the office room, no windows, one door, and locked it. I called 911, barely able to speak. The dispatcher told me to stay quiet and stay on the line. A few minutes later, I heard my brother's car screech into the driveway. He came bursting through the front door, yelling my name. When we went back to the living room, the man was gone. The police showed up minutes later, but they found nothing. No footprints, no car, no trace he'd even been there. The cop asked me to show him the AirTag, but of course I'd thrown it out. He gave me a police report number and told me to contact Apple to start a tracking request. He said it might take weeks to find the owner, if ever. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow looked like someone watching me. The next day, I contacted Apple, but they said it would require a subpoena or a police request to reveal the owner information. Basically, I was stuck waiting. Weeks went by. I never saw the man again, but something about it still haunts me. That photo on his phone, the one he said was his daughter. I keep wondering who that girl really was. She looked 18 like me, but she didn't look happy. Sometimes I wonder if she ever existed at all, or if she did, what happened to her. I moved away not long after that. My brother still lives there, but I can't even drive past that mall anymore. It's strange. AirTags were made to help people find their lost things, keys, wallets, pets. But that night I realized something horrifying. If you can track what's lost, you can also track what you want to take. Working woman, March 2025, Austin, Texas. I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas. I'm 29, work in marketing, and like most people who live alone, I keep my routine tight. Gym before work, coffee shop after, home by 8. My life was simple and predictable. That's probably why this whole thing scared me as much as it did. Because it showed me that no matter how careful you are, it only takes one stranger to shatter that sense of safety. It started one Thursday night in March. I had just gotten home from work. I kicked off my heels, set my laptop bag down, and immediately crashed on the couch. I was exhausted. I'd been at the office since 8 a.m., and all I wanted was to scroll my phone and do nothing. That's when my iPhone buzzed with a strange alert. AirTag detected near you. This item has been moving with you for some time. At first, I thought it was my neighbor's. I'd heard about that before, that AirTags could sometimes set off false alerts if someone nearby owned one. I dismissed it and went to take a shower. When I got out, another notification popped up. AirTag detected near you again. That one made me pause. I tapped it, and the app showed a map of my movements over the last few hours. My office, the gym, my drive home. The AirTag had been moving with me the entire time. My heart started pounding. I tore apart my purse, checked my jacket, my keys, my work bag. Nothing. I told myself not to panic, maybe it was a glitch. I went to bed uneasy though, keeping my phone on the nightstand. The next morning it happened again. Same notification, same message. AirTag found moving with you. At that point, I was genuinely scared. I searched every inch of my car before leaving for work. I pulled out the floor mats, checked under the seats, in the glove box, everywhere. Still nothing. That night, I met up with my friend Haley for dinner downtown. I told her about it. She looked concerned and said, "That's not normal, Jen. Someone might be tracking you. You should go to the police." But what was I supposed to say? "Hey, I can't find it, but something invisible is following me." I knew they'd just tell me to come back when I actually had proof. So, I decided to play detective. That weekend, I bought one of those small tracking detectors that can pick up Bluetooth devices. When I turned it on inside my car, the screen lit up almost instantly. There it was, a nearby AirTag signal. My skin went cold. I started following the signal's strength, crouching near the trunk, then under the back bumper. That's when I saw it, a piece of duct tape stuck to the inside of the rear wheel well. Hidden behind it was a white Apple AirTag. Someone had taped it under my car. I ripped it off, threw it in a Ziploc bag, and called the police. The officer who showed up was polite but clearly skeptical. He said it wasn't uncommon in theft cases, that maybe someone had been targeting my car, not me. He took a report and the AirTag for further investigation. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. The next few days were quiet. No alerts, no weird feelings. I started thinking maybe it really had been about my car. Then Tuesday night came. I got home from work around 9. It had been raining, and the apartment complex parking lot was almost empty. I remember fumbling with my umbrella, trying to balance my phone and my groceries at the same time. When I reached my apartment door, I froze. The door was slightly open, not wide, but just enough that I could see the light from the hallway leaking into the dark inside. I never, ever leave my door open. I stood there for what felt like an eternity. My first thought was that maybe maintenance had come in, but they always leave a note. My second thought was worse. Someone was inside. I stepped back slowly and called 911. I whispered that I thought someone had broken in. The dispatcher told me to stay outside and wait for officers. 2 units showed up within minutes. They went in first, guns drawn. I waited outside, shaking. After a few tense minutes, one of the officers came out and said, "Ma'am, you should come in and look at this." I followed him inside. Nothing was stolen, but there were small, unsettling things that were different. My bedroom closet door was open. I never leave it open. My bathroom cabinet was slightly ajar, and my clothes. They looked disturbed, like someone had gone through them. Then the officer pointed to something on my dresser. It was another AirTag. This one didn't even try to hide. It was just sitting there. I could barely breathe. I asked if it was the same one they'd taken from my car. The officer said no, the serial number was different. This was a new one. That meant whoever it was had been inside my apartment. They told me to stay somewhere else for a few nights while they investigated. I packed a bag and went to stay with Haley. The next morning, I got a call from the detective assigned to my case. He said the AirTag from my car was unregistered. It had been wiped, and this new one was linked to an account that had also been deactivated, meaning whoever it was knew how to cover their tracks. A few days later, my landlord replaced my door lock and installed a new deadbolt. I thought it was over. Until one night at Haley's apartment when my phone buzzed again. AirTag found moving with you. I wanted to throw up. We tore through my bag, her car, everywhere. Then she found it, tucked inside my coat pocket. But this one wasn't taped or hidden. It was just sitting there, as if someone had placed it by hand. That's when I realized this wasn't random. It wasn't a thief. It wasn't some stranger. It was someone who had access to me. My mind started racing. Co-workers, neighbors, even friends. But no one made sense. Then I remembered something from a few weeks before all this started. Our company had hired a new guy in the IT department. He was quiet, shy, always hung around the office late. The first week he started, he fixed my laptop. He'd had to log into my iCloud to sync some files. He even joked, now I could track you if I wanted to. At the time, I laughed. Now it made my skin crawl. I told the detective about him, gave them his name, and they started looking into it. Turns out, he'd been fired from his last job for inappropriate behavior toward a female co-worker. They brought him in for questioning, but by the time they did, he'd already vanished. Moved out of his apartment, deleted all his socials, gone completely dark. That was 8 months ago. I moved since then, changed jobs, changed my number, even changed my car. But sometimes late at night, I still get paranoid. If I hear a ping on my phone, my chest tightens. I check every corner, every pocket, every shadow. And every time I walk into my apartment, I pause before turning on the lights just to make sure nothing feels out of place. Because I learned something through all of this. When someone puts a tracker on you, it's not just your location they take, it's your peace of mind. I'm 33 years old, and until last year I would have said I had a normal life. Steady job, good friends, a small apartment in Glendale. I'd never really thought of myself as the kind of guy something true crime would ever happen to. But that's the thing about life. You don't realize how quickly it can flip until you're already caught in it. It started with a breakup. Her name was Melissa. We'd been together for almost 2 years. We met at a friend's barbecue, clicked instantly and fell hard and fast. She was the kind of person who made you feel like you were the center of her world. But after a while, that attention started to feel heavy. She'd get jealous if I texted friends. She'd call me 20 times in a night if I didn't answer right away. Little things would set her off. A coworker commenting on my photo, me staying late at work, even me not posting her enough. By the end, it wasn't love anymore. It was control. So I broke it off. That night she cried, screamed, threw my things off the balcony and said, "You'll regret this. You'll see what it's like to be followed for once." At the time, I thought it was just a bitter breakup threat. I had no idea she meant it literally. A few days later, I started getting these weird feelings that I was being watched. My phone would buzz at random times, but when I checked, there were no notifications. My car alarm went off in the middle of the night. Then one morning, when I got in my car to drive to work, my iPhone popped up a message I'd never seen before. AirTag found moving with you. I didn't own any AirTags. I checked under the seats, in the trunk, even the glove compartment. Nothing. The alert said the AirTag had been with me since last night. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I already knew who it was. I called Melissa. She didn't pick up. I texted her, "Did you put an AirTag on my car?" No reply. I decided to drive straight to the police station. They ran a scan and confirmed there was an AirTag nearby. They eventually found it magnetized to the underside of my back bumper, tucked just above the exhaust pipe. They told me they'd submit a request to Apple for the registration info, but that it could take time. I was angry, but mostly scared. If she was willing to go that far, what else was she capable of? The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I thought maybe that was the end of it. Then, one afternoon, I got home from work and found an envelope taped to my door. Inside were printed screenshots, photos of me. Some were from my Instagram, others weren't. They were photos taken through my apartment window. On the last page, in red marker, it said, "You shouldn't have lied to me." I went to the police again, filed a restraining order. She was ordered to stay away from me. I changed my locks, put cameras up, and even parked in a different spot every night. For a while, it worked. Then in late December, something worse happened. I was asleep when I heard a loud banging at my door. It was 3 a.m. "Police, open up!" I jumped out of bed, heart racing, and opened the door to find 2 officers and a detective standing there. The detective asked, "Are you Daniel Hughes?" I said yes. He told me I was being questioned in connection with a burglary. Apparently, someone had broken into my ex-girlfriend's apartment earlier that night. The security footage showed a man in a hoodie who looked exactly like me. The footage even showed my car outside her building. I told them that was impossible. I'd been home all night. They asked to check my car. When I said yes, one of the officers walked out to the parking lot while I tried to explain everything. A minute later, he came back holding something small and white. An Apple AirTag. It had been taped under the driver's seat. That's when I realized what she'd done. She'd planted a new AirTag in my car, tracked my location, and waited until I was home. Then she broke into her own apartment and used the footage to frame me. She'd been using the AirTag not just to follow me, but to prove I was somewhere I wasn't. They took me in for questioning. I spent hours explaining the situation. showing texts, the previous reports, the restraining order. The detective eventually believed me, especially after they confirmed the AirTag was registered to her Apple ID. But that didn't make it less terrifying. The idea that someone could literally rewrite reality using a $29 tracker, it messed with my head. She was arrested later that week and charged with filing false reports and stalking. Her lawyer tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, said she'd only used the AirTag to make sure I was safe. The case dragged on for months. I had to testify in court, sit there while she stared at me from across the room, with that same empty smile she used to give me when we were together. She pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and was sentenced to probation and counseling, but the damage was already done. Even now, nearly a year later, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still being tracked. I still wake up in the middle of the night and check under my car. I scan my apartment with Bluetooth detectors. I can't stop. You'd think paranoia fades over time, but it doesn't. It just hides. Sometimes I'll be driving home and see a car behind me that doesn't turn off when I expect it to. Sometimes I'll feel my phone buzz in my pocket and think, is that her again? It's exhausting. The last message she ever sent me before she was arrested was one line. "You think they'll believe you next time?" I deleted it immediately, but those words stuck. Because the truth is, technology's made it easier than ever to track someone, to follow them, to know where they are every second of every day. But what scares me more is how easily it can destroy your reality. How one person, with one tiny piece of tech, can turn your life into a horror story and make it look like you're the villain. And that brings me to the end of these stories. Each one still sits with me, because they all share something that feels wrong. That hollow realization that someone, somewhere, knows where you are. AirTags were meant to help us find lost things, not to help predators find us. Call to action for the video. If you've ever had something like this happen to you, share your story in the comments and stay safe out there.